What's up guys, ArchAngel Manga here, and today's series review is going to be the masterpiece that is Cowboy Bebop. I don't think it's an understatement when I say it's a masterpiece, because it is a staple amongst anime. It is just undeniably had a massive impact on the industry since when it was released in I believe 1998. So it is a considerably old anime. But more than lives up to the standard of today's anime and can be thoroughly enjoyed without it seeming like it's aged with the times. It still comes across as very current and yeah, just massively enjoyable. To start out with, Cowboy Bebop was produced by Sunrise, the massive powerhouse that was behind a lot of the Gundam series and Outlaw Star. The Big O, I believe, Escaflowne, which I'm still to see, and it was directed by Shinichiro Watanabe. I believe this was actually his directorial debut as like a solo director. I think he did like co-directed or co-produced like a few of the anime series prior to this, but this was his directorial debut, and his name is all over it in terms of his style. How he produced Cowboy Bebop and how he directed that. The certain characteristics that have carried over into like his future anime that is directed. So yeah, this is like his starting point. His sort of staple on the map. It was also composed. The music was composed by Yoko Kanno, the composer behind Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex and Kids on Slope. And that's one great thing about the music in this series. Like the music is in itself, in effect, like a character within itself, because it plays such a massive central part, which I will talk a little bit more about. These elements I've talked about a little bit more further into the review. Overall, I'd say Cowboy Bebop deals with like philosophical concepts and ideas like existentialism, like past events and loneliness, and that kind of shows through powerfully with like the dialogue and how the characters interact with each other. Like they say, existentialism starts with the human. Only a human can come up with an idea, and that's where it all starts. And you can definitely tell that in the dialogue, and when people are like talking amongst each other and things like that. Because given the fact that it's a sci-fi, and that there's lots of scientific fictional elements in the series. The dialogue itself is very grounded. There's no sort of like jargon or like made up sort of terminology or anything that people use. The conversations are very down to earth, sort of very connectable. Even though it's only like a 26 episode series, there's like a really deep past to the universe and the world that Cowboy Bebop is set in, because it's set in the entire solar system. It's set in 2021, so a little bit far into the future, but like not too far. And it's set in a time when the entire solar system is being colonized by humans, with the help of these like inter sort of, I don't want to say interdimensionary, because you can't cross between dimensions, but these basically gates that allow for like faster than light travel, which make it easy to travel from planet to planet within our own galaxy, not our galaxy, sorry, our own solar system. And one thing that's useful about these gates is that they can also transfer light from the sun. So with these gates, they're able to transfer light to planets, helping to sort of terraform them and basically become habitable for humans. So you have like hotspots like Mars, some of the moons of Jupiter and things like that, which are basically extremely Earth-like now, thanks to the terraforming, due to the fact that light can be transferred from the sun, quicker through these gates as well. So, yeah, the sci-fi elements behind the series, really cleverly adapted and built constructively to the point where it almost feels like it makes sense. So yeah. Like I said, there's like a really deep history to the world where the sort of universe that Cowboy Bebop is set in. In 2022, Earth was subject to like a massive catastrophe, involving one of the gates, and most of the inhabitants of Earth ended up having to migrate to other planets because Earth's surface become irradiated and basically uninhabitable. So the generation of people that live in 2071, sorry, have like no real memories of Earth. There's very little people that are left that actually remember what Earth used to be like, and a lot of the planets and moons that people have colonized, they basically formed their own states and countries and governments and things like that. So crime especially has been increased like 100-fold compared to how it was on Earth, and there's like crime syndicates that like practically own planets and things like that. So to deal with this threat of inter-solar system crime, there's been a police force set up called the Inter-Solar System Police, and they established a bounty system whereby they hire and legalize people who are able to collect bounties and bring criminals to justice. And this is where cowboys come in. Cowboys are basically bounty hunters, and the show basically follows a crew of cowboys, of bounty hunters. So yeah, that's basically the sort of the history of Cowboy Bebop. The synopsis is basically it centers around a guy called Spike Spiegel on Jet Black, and they've basically partnered up to basically go around bringing criminals to justice. They both have their really sort of deep pasts, and it basically follows them picking up crew members, and from there following their sort of adventures and journeys, bringing, like I say, criminals to justice. Each episode focuses on like a new sort of bounty, and that's the one thing that's really easy to Cowboy Bebop is easy to digest for the fact that it's episodic. And you can basically enjoy one episode like it's like a miniature sort of movie. It follows on there's episodes dedicated to each member of the Bebop, which is the name of the spaceship that is owned by Jet Black. So yeah, we have Spike Spiegel, who's the main character, who's got a really mysterious past. We have Jet Black, who is a former member of the ISSP. Then we meet Faye Valentine, who's like an amnesiac femme fatale, who also has a really interesting, mysterious past. We meet Ein, who's a hyper-intelligent, genetically modified dog, like a little corgi sort of thing. And then finally we have Edward, who is a really eccentric preteen. You think he's a guy, but it actually turns out he's a girl. He's basically a super hacker, so anytime there's like an instance of like cybercrime, which is heavily frequent in the solar system, especially in a time where technology is developed to a point where cybercrime has become like one of the main types of crime. Ed comes in very handy with being able to like decrypt certain messages, or hack into like people's emails or whatever, just things like that. So each member plays a particular role in the crew, and each has their strengths and weaknesses, which is really interesting. And for the fact that it focuses on each of them and we learn about their pasts like through flashbacks and things like that, it allows for really good development with them. So yeah, like I said, it focuses on each character, and the episode's kind of episodic, but there is an overarching story, and that's to do with Spike. He's the main character, and that Spike, even though he comes across as like really jovial and friendly and kind of laid back, he does have a really deep and dark past. He's not like the saint that people might think he is. He's done some pretty bad things. He's angered some pretty bad people, and without going into spoiler territory, there's an overarching plot with him wanting to take out a certain member of a certain crime syndicate, obviously it progresses from like the first episode where you learn that he's learn a little bit more about his past, and every couple of episodes you learn a little bit more, and then you learn a little bit more. But for the most part, the whole series as a whole doesn't really focus massively on his past, which I was kind of disappointed with. I would like to have learned more about his past. I mean, you know, his character, you know, progression and development is concluded to to an effect, but it all comes around too fast with Spike. Hey, don't knock over my camera. Come on, come through. Good girl. All right. Sorry. But yeah, like I said, each character does have their own development, but I would have liked the series to be a little bit longer to be able to kind of like properly flesh out the characters, because we'll learn about each character's past, like, you know, in like one episode, and then it won't really be dealt with. You know, like basically we'll learn about their past, and it'll, you know, that'll be like one episode, and then later on in the series, we'll have an episode where like they're resolving their past, and you know, kind of 2 episodes in total, you know, like deal with like their own personal character development. I don't feel was enough to really be able to flesh them out. I mean, granted they are well developed, but I would have liked, you know, more time to be able to develop them. So that's really kind of like my only gripe with the series, is that I just felt it was a little bit too short. If it was, you know, I mean, like I said, it's only 26 episodes or sessions, as you know, as it's depicted in the series. You know, I would have maybe liked it to be maybe about, I don't know, I don't want to say twice as long, like 50 episodes, because then it would kind of drag out. But you know, at least 30 episodes. I don't know. I think that would have been nice. You know, I would have liked to learn more about you know, Spike's past, and especially Faye's past as well, because she's an amnesiac. So there's a lot of things for her to learn about herself, and like, you know, a lot of sort of missing elements in her life and her past. And you know, I felt that she had the most interesting backstory personally, and I would have liked more screen time for her past. So yeah, they're really my only sort of problematic aspects. So yeah, what else can I say? One thing as well, one thing I really want to talk about with Cowboy Bebop. One thing that really made it so big in the West, because from what I've read, I believe that Cowboy Bebop wasn't a massive success in Japan, or maybe I might be completely wrong with that. I might be thinking of something else, but I know there is a series, whether or not this is Cowboy Bebop, that wasn't as popular in Japan, but was massively successful in like America, and I believe it's Cowboy Bebop. And one thing that makes it really accessible to a Western audience is the fact that even though it's set in the future and in a time where, you know, faster than light travel is possible, you know, we've colonized other planets and things like that, it still comes across as very current and very modern. Like there's, you know, each planet is like Mars, for instance, is heavily reminiscent of Earth, and the whole series has this kind of like space western feel to it, like a spaghetti western, like, and that's made very clear through the composership of Yoko Kanno. There's a lot of you know, harmonicas and, you know, sort of slow, sort of westerny sort of country music. You know, there's heavy experimentation with like different genres of music that make it very grounded and makes it feel really current. And even though, like I said, it's set in the future, it feels like it's kind of like a juxtaposition between the present and the future, and it's kind of like a throwback to, you know, the old sort of crime capers and spaghetti westerns in a way, like the examples such as, you know, there's you know, lots of like VCR players and stuff that are like, you know, selling for like, you know, massive sort of crazy prices. People still use VCR players. You know, people dress like, people don't dress like in the future, or how we would imagine people to dress like in the future. People dress still like really old fashioned. The cities don't look overly futuristic. You know, the architecture of the buildings still look, you know, heavily reminiscent of, you know, present day Earth. You know, people still do, you know, really mundane things like fishing, listening to the radio, things like that. You know, watching TV, which makes it just feel really, you know, current. And that's one thing that makes it very accessible. Also the names in the series of some of the characters, like, you know, you have Faye Valentine, Jet Black, Edward, Spike, you know, the names that are easy to grasp for anybody who's just only getting into anime. If this is if I can say one thing about Cowboy Bebop, it's definitely an anime that would, you know, I would highly recommend to somebody who hasn't watched any anime whatsoever, because, you know, the names are very easy to grasp. You know, the locations are very familiar, you know, visually and aesthetically, and overall, it's just it's a series that can connect with any viewer. I believe, you know, anybody can watch and enjoy this, whether they're a fan of animation or not even just anime, not even just Japanese animation. Like, if you're not even a fan of any animation, this is a series that can connect with anybody from all walks of life, or all walks of, you know, tastes, that kind of thing. So yeah, you know, I would definitely give this series a 9 out of 10. It would be a solid 10 out of 10 if, you know, like I said, it was longer and had more time to flesh out the characters, or at least some of them. But, you know, for what it was and how you know, how long it was, the character development was adequate. You know, I was kind of disappointed that it ended so soon, because I enjoyed it so much. You know, the pacing was good as well, because it's episodic. You know, each episode flies by pretty quickly. You know, something happens in the start of the episode. There's a bounty. They end up even getting the bounty or not getting the bounty. Like 90% of the time, they don't catch their bounty. You know, because they're always trying to fill the perpetually hungry bellies. You know, that's one thing that's kind of carries over into episode to episode, the fact that they're always hungry, and they always have nothing to eat, or they always have no money. And, you know, watching a series like that kind of humbles you, because, you know, even though it's set in space, you know, in the, you know, not distant future, but, you know, in the close and near future, people are still going hungry. You know, people are still homeless, people are still starving. You know, these, you know, it's things like this, like that depicted in the series, which make it still feel very current, because in a time such as, you know, 2071, you would have thought they would have been able to resolve, you know, world peace or starvation or hunger and things like that, especially when they've colonized other planets and they've got more resources. You know, it's a really humbling series, and, you know, I'm really glad that I've gotten around to watching it, you know, because I feel like, you know, I've kind of hit a milestone. It's definitely something you need to watch. So yeah, that has been my review of Cowboy Bebop, directed by Shinichiro Watanabe. So yeah, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree with my points? Do you feel that there's any more sort of negatives to Cowboy Bebop? You know, do you maybe feel that it's overrated? Because, you know, there are people who, you know, there's a lot of people who say it's like the greatest anime ever. You know, professional critics alike also state that. So yeah, that's been my review. ArchAngel Manga, signing out.